Hi, Hamish Conway here, and welcome to another episode of TACOS Tuesday. And we're doing something a little bit different in this episode, and I'm interviewing Jamie Paros from Skewdrop in a slightly longer interview. And why I'm doing that is because he's got a fascinating story, and it's worth listening to if you really want to unlock some huge savings inside of your whole supply chain. And Jamie shares of how he's selling on Amazon himself and dealing with some challenges and costs of shipping, etc. And he found out how things were really working in China. And on the back of this, he started Skewdrop for himself and to solve these problems. And it's expanded since then, changed a lot, but he's got such a unique perspective on how to make this work for you. And whether you're sending into the USA or the UK, and Germany's got an amazing thing that he's doing there that is going to save a huge amount of time, and also looking at Australia. This is one that you really want to tune into, whether you are selling the USA or not. But if you're in e-commerce, you want to be understanding what is possible out there. So enjoy this one and listen all the way to the end. All the best. Hi there, Hamish Conway here, and welcome to another episode of TACOS Tuesday. This is episode number 36, and with me today is Jamie Paros from Skewdrop. Welcome, Jamie.
Hamish, thanks for the invite, mate, and really stoked to catch up after a couple of years since I last saw you.
I know you've been very busy, and I'm looking forward today to diving into some of the details. And look, for people, why you want to be listening to this episode here is if you're a brand and you're selling anywhere in the world, you've got inventory and it's being made somewhere and it's got to be in storage, you've got to move it. And along this whole supply chain journey, there can be so many leakages of money that is eating into your margins. And look, Jamie's got this really unique background that we'll dive into. I want to hear his story about in the transport game, and then with Amazon, and then to now what he's doing with Skewdrop in China and US and around the world. So this is going to be fascinating. Obviously, with the current environment as we're recording this here, there's significant tariffs that are being put on sellers shipping from China into the USA. So we'll dig into that a little bit as well. But this is going to be a cracker. Looking forward to it. Okay, so Jamie, let's get a bit of the backstory here. Tell us about you're in the transport game. What were you doing, and then just kind of journey on through to what caught your attention about Amazon.
Yeah, thanks for that, mate. Appreciate the intro. Look, backstory, long story short, was involved in a family transport business. We had semi-trailer trucks. We're involved with ports and containers and pickups and deliveries to customers. Not so much e-com space, more just general freight and industry type of goods. Wasn't introduced into anything e-com until a little bit later in my journey. But always was involved in logistics, transport companies, warehousing as well. We dabbled in a little bit. And just being exposed to that whole industry, which is just huge. And as you rightly mentioned, if you don't get things right in this game, there's a lot of leaks, and it can cost you big time because they're big costs. Like supply chain is probably 1/3 of any e-commerce business. People look at the various other costs that are involved, but the actual supply chain part takes up so much capital. So you really got to know what you're doing and get things right. And that was my background. Fast forward to 2016, we had 4 kids, my wife and I. When they were born, there was 4 under 4, so it was pretty hectic. We had 2 kids, then we had twins. So when the twins were born, we had 4 kids under 4, which was kind of crazy. And I was working 6 days a week in the business. My wife was at home, so we were blessed to be able to be in a position where she could look after the family, which was great. And I just felt like I was missing time with the family a lot. My wife had started dabbling. She was so busy when the kids were young that she wanted to start looking at doing something for herself. So I started looking at e-com, selling things online, eBay, Amazon, these kind of things. And we sort of stumbled across the Amazon game in Australia and learned how to do that and got pretty good at it, actually. So we had a pretty successful business. We raced up to 7 figures in a business within 4 or 5 months. Like back in the day, you could just,
Wow. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
this was 2017, 18. Like we had some really great USP, unique selling proposition.
What kind of category were you in? What were
We
you?
were in the beauty space.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Competitive.
can talk
Mm.
about it now because it really doesn't matter. But we were selling makeup mirrors. But
Okay.
what we did is we added a phone holder to it for all the influencers to
Yeah.
record and do their beauty, tips and stuff like that. So it was this unique thing that we had on Amazon where they were selling all these makeup mirrors, but then we had that really great Western flavored social Instagrammy, that whole avatar thing about these
Yeah.
makeup mirrors, and had different designs and all sorts of stuff. And my wife was amazing at doing all that content and really promoting this feature. And they just sold like hotcakes. Like we couldn't keep up. Like
Yeah.
these things were racing out the door, and we were
Yeah.
just
Good.
first couple of months, like we were doing like, 6 figures. It was just crazy, right? So and that went on for about, I guess, 3 years. 3, 4 years, I think, coming into the fourth year. I would travel to China a lot. They were very fragile. They were small mirrors, but large ones as well.
Yeah.
And being glass,
Mm.
and Australia only being 8 or 9 hours from China, every time we'd fill containers, I would go over there and I would make sure that everything got done properly. So
Nice. Okay.
I was going over there 4, 5, 6 times a year, just being there present for the container loading process, making sure that everything got there. Because you can imagine you break a few of these mirrors, they're really expensive units.
Yeah.
So, long story short, and this is probably a story for another time, but our manufacturer launched 3 brands with our product.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, 3
Yeah.
brands.
So, I mean, you hear about these cases, but it's not often. But yeah, and I knew them personally, like pretty well. Like I'd been there that many times, and anyway, it's a story for another time. But it is an interesting story. But yeah, we were in a position where we got pegged back and probably couldn't exit the business what we were planning to do. But anyway, the journey is the journey, and you end up where you end up because of the stepping stones along the way and the people I've met and the opportunities that I have now and what I'm doing now. When you look back at and try and connect the dots, you think, why did I go through that pain and all that, those times? But it's easy now to look back and go, well, I met him for that, and then I met them for this, and then I met her to connect me here, and then you end up where you end up. So
It's
very
never a
firm
straight
believer.
path, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a very firm believer, Hamish, that you're meant to be where you're meant to be at the right time. So just sometimes you can't see it. So even like these tariffs, and just jumping ahead, but people think, we always ask ourselves the question, why are we experiencing this right now? Where's the opportunity and what's the positive side to this?
Yeah,
So
100%. That
I'm
reframing any circumstance is such an important skill.
yeah,
Because if you're in that victim mode or blame mode, nothing
yeah.
gets done, no action happens. But if you can reframe it, even if you're kidding yourself,
Mm. Yeah.
joking, it does shift your whole state,
Yeah.
right? And then you go, okay,
Yeah.
let's get into solution mode now, and
And
that's
we're like
such a
big
good
on that.
question.
We're big on that, not just in the house, in the business, with my business partners. We're all on that same wavelength. We're always, the glass is half full, never it's
Yeah,
half empty.
yeah,
And we're always thinking, where's the next opportunity? Why were we presented this? What's going to be the outcome? Because if you think like that and you go through it enough and you see that there's a positive outcome, you're just going through the storm and you're going to come out on the better side. So
yeah.
we don't let any of that language enter our space if we can. And it's a work in progress. We're all human, but and
Yeah.
sometimes are tougher than others, but we keep that mindset about us. But I
Yeah.
do digress. Apologies.
No, it's good little sidetrack. And so
Yeah.
you had this your friend and your supplier starts competing against you,
Yeah.
and so that challenge there. But you're also at this stage you built a community of
Yeah.
helping other Amazon sellers with Michael.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
yeah, so tell us a little bit about that and even Southern Seller Fest, the event.
Yeah. So I guess, the community came out of, the COVID lockdowns here in Australia and just everyone being at home. We had an opportunity to meet up a couple of times a week online and try and connect with the community. So yeah, that's how that began. We just tried to touch base with all the community through that lockdown period and be
Yeah.
that beacon of light. But I guess what was more important as that evolved is all these influencers and sellers and service providers and big players in the space from around the world, whether it be the UK, US, or anywhere, Amazon influencers that we're learning from were all available because everyone was locked down. So
Yeah.
we would reach out to them and say, hey, what are you doing on Wednesday night? Can you jump on a call? And so all of a sudden we've got like the biggest influencers in our game jumping on calls with us and like stacking 2 or 3 guests and doing these amazing big shows.
Yeah.
We're getting
Yeah.
like 3, 4, 500 people on a Zoom call.
Great. Great.
So we moved from Zoom, started a Facebook community, went live into Facebook because you can't send out Zoom invitations to 500 people. It's just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the End Game Network was born from that. We built, a little bit of rapport in the country, in New Zealand and Australia. Just provided solutions. Done weekly shows. Right up until the end of last year, like we were doing a weekly show every week for the sellers for 4 or 5 years straight. Never missed a beat. After COVID, people wanted to connect again, and hence we began Southern Seller Fest, which we did 2 years in Sydney at the
ICC.
ICC. I don't know why that escaped me, but yeah, 2 years at the ICC, and then last year we were tapped on the shoulder by Amazon in Singapore to bring the show to Singapore, which was an amazing experience for us.
Yeah.
And took that on the road. This year we aren't doing one, unfortunately. Just shifted focus, and Skew Drop, which we'll get to, has just taking a lot of the forefront and energy in our world, and we can see a really good opportunity. And as an entrepreneur, you'll know yourself, Hamish, when it's very hard to get to a point where there's a business that's actually flourishing and you feel like that's what you're being called to do, and you're solving a problem for other businesses that's making an impact on them. So you get drawn through these phases, I think. And I mean, I know it's a little bit disappointing for people that may hear that we're not doing it again, but there's always meetups, and we're always catching up with the folks that are still in the game. But putting an event on like that, you can appreciate, takes up a lot of time and energy.
It's a big effort and energy. And so, I mean, it's an amazing contribution. And so I guess like the segue being, at one of these events here, I remember you did a great job of launching Skew Drop. And so kind of curious to, it was really clever what you did, and we'll maybe touch on that. But I'm curious, was it because you'd been talking with so many brands and listening to what their pain points were? Is that kind of how you came about it? Or because it, like, honestly, when you talked about Skew Drop, like anything to do with freight, I'm like, oh my God, this is like a nightmare. And I go, these guys are either crazy or really courageous doing this here. But so I guess to back it up is like, how did you, what was the trigger to go, we've got to do this?
I think it was the time, if you remember, back in 2020, 2021, that COVID era where shipping went up to like, a full container went up to like 15, 20 grand. Now, when you're carting mirrors like we were, that are big boxes and oversized products, and you're only getting, 1,000 or a couple of thousand units, which is, I don't know, a month's worth of supply for us, a container's worth. So you're churning through freight at a rapid knot, which is impacting cash flow. So basically I reached out to my contacts in China, and I knew that there was always this China local price, thing going on. And I reached out to a few of my China contacts and said, hey, are you guys seeing these shipping prices, or is it just us, or is it the globe, or can you get me a China price? You know what I mean? Like, get me a local price if I work with you. And what I found out was that none of them were shipping containers like that, like we were doing. And none of them were using US 3PLs as we were, sending from China to a US 3PL, unpack it, then pay last mile fees, all that kind of, that kind of strategy. They were keeping things in China, whether it was in their own warehouse or leasing a warehouse very cheap, getting all their manufacturers to send to the one location, storing there. Then they'd have a few staff because obviously, labor was affordable,
Yeah.
to run their businesses and their supply chain from these little facilities. And I got to go to a couple of them, and it was amazing to see it. Like, these were not like backstreet operations. These were like strategically placed in amongst, manufacturing hubs, everything
Mm.
coming in, staff, organization, you know, everything down to the T, and they were drip feeding what they needed when they need it, if you want to call it just in time inventory, because they did not want to pay all the fees that we were paying with 3PLs and etc. Just
Yeah.
straight to Amazon, what
Yeah.
you need, what and when you need it. They built algorithms around their sales velocity, so they knew exactly what was being sold every day, entered it into these, I don't know, these programs that they'd written to tell them, you need to send this many today, you need to send this many today. Then based it off the time on the water and all those
Yeah.
calculations, and always made sure they had their 30 days of inventory in there. Never let it sink under or below. They could pull levers of regular freight or express shipments so they wouldn't run out of stock in case they had a sales event.
Mm. Mm.
So all this thing, and I'm just like, this is amazing on cash flow. We wouldn't be having to pay 15 grand a container, although prices may go up a little bit because we're reducing the container amount. They're paying a great freight rate anyway. They're drip feeding. So let's see if we can do something like this. So SKU Drop actually started with me, Michael, and a couple of other people saying, hey, let's get a facility in China for our brands, for our stuff.
Right.
And
Okay.
we can get a manager, a Chinese manager, to look after our stuff, and we'll send everyone's, and we're talking like 2 or 3 guys that we knew that were going to be in on this thing. So
Yeah.
once we started running the numbers, we're like, well, if it's good for us, it's got to be good for others. And then one thing led to another, and we just decided to build the whole thing. But yeah, it's evolved, and it's evolved like drastically, but we can get into that.
Yeah. I guess a little, I mean, it's fascinating starting a business in China. You've
Mm.
just had the experience, of your manufacturer copying your product and creating 3 brands. And then so you go to start a business in China. And then, so from a cultural point of view, like, how did you know who to trust and actually, do
Yeah.
business with there? Kind of curious about that, actually.
Yeah, that's a really great question. We had been introduced to an American Chinese fellow, who was in the Amazon space and was in the communities, but not so much. He was on the outskirts of the community, and he was, an 8-figure seller with his own brand.
Right.
He was running the US side of things, and his China business partner was running the China side of things. And we got introduced to these guys, and they were implementing this model because all the Chinese do, right?
Mm. Mm.
There are now 3PLs popping up in the US that no one will ever hear about, but they're Chinese owned, and they facilitate their own networks.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we know of many, many US 3PLs that on the outside just looks like a white warehouse, but you'll never know who owns it, and it's just running Chinese operations.
Mm.
So the 3PLs that you usually hear about or see, the ones that are in the communities for the Western sellers, there's a whole network for Chinese as well now. But back
Yeah.
when we were talking, they were doing this model, and these 2 guys are our business partners now. So they were actually Amazon sellers; they still are. And we presented our model to them and their thoughts. They couldn't quite grasp that there would be a market for this because they just don't operate that way.
Yeah.
So it was definitely not intended to be marketed towards Chinese sellers, but very much Westerners getting access to China.
Mm.
And for probably the first 6-7 months, to answer your question, we just toyed with the idea, jumped in weekly meetings just to see if we could all, 1, get along, 2, see if this model had legs. 3, it was going to be a 3 to 4 year build. So would we be, in a position in our lives to commit to something like this?
Mm.
With 5 co-founders, that's usually like red flag stuff. But
Yeah.
it's worked. We all got the same synergy. And coming up to 4 years since conceptual stages, we're still flourishing.
Brilliant, brilliant. That's fascinating. And just a quick question while on that. So it's been 4 years, and because I did
Mm.
see some LinkedIn posts there. We said you had like a thousand brands or a million,
Hmm.
uh, units. Like
Products.
what products? What are some of the interesting stats of where you're up to
Yeah, look,
that you're
we've
willing
done
to share?
20,000 shipments, I believe now.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting one.
Mm.
So you start to get a little bit, you start to get pretty good at that. 20,000 shipments into Amazon, that is to the US,
Wow.
UK,
Okay.
EU, and Australian market. So that's a bit of an achievement. Yeah, storing millions of products now, working with hundreds and hundreds of brands. I'm not sure if it's 1,000 anymore. It sort of ebbs and flows.
Mm.
But yeah, really seeing our business take shape on one. It takes a little while to define exactly who you are, I think,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
as a startup, and you're trying to solve problems and move into directions that may or may not be for you.
Mm.
That's taken probably 3 years just to work out exactly what we do, who we are, and what we offer,
Yeah.
especially in this space. So that was important. But yeah, some stats, all those things are pretty cool. We've got 3 US 3PL nodes opening up with partners now. We can talk about
Nice.
some other stuff as well as we get
Yeah.
into it with the access to the EU and UK. And, never say never. Australia, because we're here, we're based here, we're looking at doing something here.
Mm.
SKU Drops evolved from building it to when we saw you at Southern Seller Fest and launched it for the small Amazon seller. It was very much built for the small Amazon seller who can create shipping plans in our portal, um, automation, no need to talk to freight forwarders. We can ship your goods from the warehouse direct into Amazon, and it still does that, and it still has that function. But we've evolved, and the use case has been presented to us from an enterprise level,
Mm.
where we're now getting, 9-figure brands, people doing in excess of $100 million, 10, 15,000 SKUs in their portfolio. And
Right.
that's where we see the game moving for this
Mm.
use case,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they've got a bigger problem to solve than a small Amazon seller, that being forecasting, demand planning. Where are you going to point your arrows? How much are you going to order for that country, that marketplace? Whereas they can see, and what we've built in our software now, where we've moved into this multi-dimensional node, being able to pull levers and plant inventory in certain locations to help facilitate or take the burden off these demand planners and where they need to put or place inventory. And what I
Mm.
mean by that is, now some of the businesses, the really big businesses that we're working with, can order inventory that can go anywhere around the world because they're set up with their GS1 barcodes. The product can be sent anywhere. It's not language specific. The platform is built to deal with both, so we can handle things that need to keep separate. Someone might have a US plug and someone's got a UK plug. You've got to keep those products
Correct.
separate. But
Mm.
for these really big enterprises where they're doing clothing or
Right.
gifts or whatever the business may be, a lot of licensed products too. We're
Mm.
dealing with companies that are doing Marvel, Star Wars, like all the big licensing, Disney.
Yeah.
So their product can go anywhere around the world. The problem is their demand planners have to send 2 containers to the UK, 2 containers to the EU, 5 containers to the US, and then if they don't sell well or they've overordered or underordered, that's it.
Yeah.
Whereas now
Yeah.
they're using our warehouse facility as a hub in China, and with the way the software is built, we enable a vendor SKU or a portfolio SKU to be mapped to any marketplace or country. So when they do an
Mm.
outbound
Mm.
order, it can go anywhere as
Yeah.
long as that product can go anywhere. So the business has evolved, the software, the solutions evolved to something a lot more sophisticated now.
Mm.
And
Mm.
these bigger brands are jumping in to say, hey, this is an opportunity for us to go, well, there's not enough product in the UK, we'll send some more, or there's too much, pull back, like these kind of things. And so, yeah, it's been a bit of a game changer.
Yeah, that's huge, isn't it? Yeah, demand planning. That is the key because you don't want to have the cost of sending goods. I know I've had goods go from Turkey to America to Australia, to New Zealand, and
Yeah,
just
it's
no
crazy.
profit, no profit. So that's super smart, and it's really like it's risk mitigation, isn't it? It's
It is.
taking away that guesswork, and then that's super smart. I like that. That's
And
good.
probably just, to bring in the conversation, I guess it's a good segue for the tariffs is the businesses that we do store goods for. It's been a little bit of a godsend because they've got a bit of a
Mm.
chance to
Mm.
breathe at the moment with having their goods in our warehouse, so they can maybe only send what they need rather than
Yes.
committing to full containers. Also, from cash flow point of view, not having to send one or two containers and pay, a small mortgage for, the goods for the tariff once it gets to the US.
Mm.
So they've
Mm.
been, and another thing is they've been able to divert or redirect stock as well because it hasn't left China. It's in our facility. Well, this is going to incur 140 or 160% tariff. Let's send some of it to the UK because
Yes.
it's not worth sending it to the US. So they've got choices with us. They've got it, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's been really powerful. And you just don't know when this deal will be made or this will pass. And if you've got something on the water and it gets accepted into the US and you pay $100,000 tariff bill, and then 2 weeks later a deal's made, at least
Yeah.
you're only sending what you need and you need it. And if something does change because it's ever changing fast, I guess they might have saved tariffs with some of the things they held back.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great option there to have that people can have.
Mm.
So with the tariffs, just while we're on that
Hmm.
topic, we'll just stick there. What I mean, like I was looking at a post back in November, or when you're at the Southern Seller Fest, and it was a topic
Hmm.
then, so you kind
Mm.
of see what was coming down the pipeline. So, have you got a crystal ball or something? And if you do, how do you see this playing out? Like,
Yeah, look,
what
it's
what's
an
what are you
yeah.
noticing, and yeah, what are the Chinese talking about, or what are you noticing? Who's it impacting?
Yeah, look, I've got my thoughts. Obviously, it's speculation, and we're talking
Mm,
off air, Hamish. No one can really predict what's going to happen. But I guess from my standpoint, just my own personal standpoint, it's not sustainable to keep these sort of tariffs up for the amount of goods that are going to the US. Now,
mm,
whether they want to bring certain industries back to the US for manufacturing, I totally get that. Whether they're just looking for a more equal or level playing field. I heard an interesting take the other day that for Western sellers or US sellers, the Chinese, they make it very difficult for us to compete in their marketplace. So it's not reciprocal. We can't compete in their
mm,
marketplace or send product to their market, or we can't litigate in their courts for something that goes wrong. They're very untouchable, which I can sort of understand, and sort of coming from where I came from with our e-commerce products as well.
mm.
So yeah, look, I don't know the landscape enough to have a solid opinion on when I think it's going to end, because I just don't know what their objective is, whether it's a level playing field or bringing manufacturing back to America. It's too long of a play if they expect plastic widgets to be made again in the
Yeah, yeah.
US.
It's not
I
happening.
just don't know. I think it's a
Mm.
bigger picture here that we may or may not see. Crystal ball, I don't think it'll be too long. If we go through a Q4 like this, it's going to be very damaging, not just to businesses, but in the US, but I think, and consumers in the US, but I think businesses around the world that are importing into the US.
Yeah,
So
because
the
you were talking
Chinese,
before about planning. Like it's quarter 2 now. People are planning for quarter 4, but with
Mm,
this environment of uncertainty. So how
yeah.
does that impact?
Well, to be honest, we haven't even got that far. Like we're just trying to mitigate every day. What date did this get sent? What date did that get
Mm,
sent?
mm,
I got that tariff. What did I get that? So we're sort of putting out fires. We're just now sort of getting to a point where we've had a chance to breathe and work out what that looks like and the way we're going to help customers. From a planning perspective for a business, I don't know how they're doing that and forecasting that. Demand planners to be basing their numbers, their forecasting, their sales, what they've got in stock in various countries, and how they're going to mitigate this tariff. For some
mm,
products, margin has been built into to maybe wear it for a few months, but how long can that go for? For other businesses that don't have margin, we've got some customers who have got really high velocity selling products but low
Yeah, low
margin, and I
margin.
think that they're gonna really like why even send it if you can't sell it for what you paid for it, kind of thing. So the one point I will make before I finish up on that is that we need to understand that the Chinese play in a different environment and they've got different opportunity. What I mean by that is they've got the ability to ship differently. They've got the ability to do different things, being manufacturers and invoicing. And I don't think we're all on a level playing field there. So it's just an interesting one that the very people that the administration in the US is probably trying to put into line, if you want to call it that, is not being really affected by it. So that's why I just can't see how this ends up not ending soon. Not ending soon.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I mean, we've kind of touched on a few points here. Just for those listening who are, obviously people listening to this will be moving inventory.
Yeah.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see brands making when it comes to inventory management?
So from the moment people put purchase orders in, the biggest mistake is that the way they buy their products from the supplier. So that's step number one, because that then starts a flow-on effect of how or who's responsible for shipping and how you ship. So experienced brands and big business will be well versed in this, but not all the time, because I see it with various manufacturers they deal with. Obviously, we're in a privileged position where we're holding goods for some big organizations that deal with various suppliers. And if they're exporting with us, we're dealing with a lot of the paperwork. So we get to see how things are being done. But keeping it really simple for the people watching, a shipping Incoterm is a method of buying your product where people think, should I ship this way? Should I ship DDP? Should I ship FOB? Should I ship X Works? Doesn't work like that. Those terms are how you purchase your product.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest mistake people make. They go in and they buy their product FOB, then ship DDP. That just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't compute. Because the price of the unit and the way you ship is factored into that price.
Yes.
So I'll give you an example. If this pen is $10, when you buy it DDP means that supplier is responsible for getting those goods from China all the way to your destination, and you don't take ownership of those goods until it arrives at your door. So they're responsible for manufacturing, sending the goods to the port, the shipping, the tariffs, any duties, taxes, everything, and it arrives at your door, and you've paid, instead of being $10 a pen, you've paid $12 a pen, because the $2 extra is going to cover the rest of the goods and the process.
So that seems like a smart idea for a lot of people.
It's a pretty straightforward idea. Small e-commerce sellers do DDP shipping all the time. Then FOB is free on board, which means this pen is $10, but they'll charge you $10.50 if you buy it FOB. The reason is FOB means you're responsible for the shipping, but they're responsible to get the pen on the ship. So just the China side. So the 50 cents covers them taking the product to the port, some paperwork, getting it onto the ship, and then your freight forwarder is responsible to get the goods across the ocean, do the customs clearance, and get the goods last mile into your warehouse or Amazon or wherever it may be. That's $10.50. X Works, this pen is now $9, because all it is a contract between you and the supplier, and then when the goods are finished, the boxes are pushed outside their door, and you're responsible for pickup, everything. The problem I see, and to answer your point, is people are paying $12 for this pen for FOB, X Works, or DDP. It doesn't matter.
Right. Okay.
So when I engage with a supplier, I want to know my X Works price, I want to know my FOB price, and I want to know my DDP price, because I want to know how much this is worth. And then I'll make a decision, and I'll keep control of whether I get my own forwarders, use you, compare costs or compare risk and responsibility to know exactly how I'm going to move forward with this supplier and this product, and whether I like that price or not. So someone will buy FOB and pay $10.50, and then they'll get charged, from a freight forwarder to do DDP. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's
Yeah.
like now
Yeah.
the forwarder is just simply, sending goods that may or may not be declared properly. You've got an commercial invoice for $10.50. I just, it doesn't compute to me. That's one thing. The next
Yeah.
thing I see, and this is a big one too, is I call it categorizing your stock in your inventory. So I call it slow movers, fast movers, and medium movers. So A, B, C inventory, meaning A are fast movers, B are medium movers, and C is slob stock, slow and obsolete stock. So,
Yes. Yeah.
you might have something that's slow. People just send everything. They just send it all to a US 3PL, have it sitting there, paying exorbitant storage fees and just trying to sell units and jacking up PPC and all that sort of stuff, which is your game, to try and move a product that's not moving. There needs to be more work done around categorizing your products and inventory management that way. And I guess that's where a problem that we solve really well, because you can keep everything in China,
Right. Lower
have it
storage
stored
costs.
cheap, and
Yeah.
and send what you need when you need it, and sort of control inventory a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Okay.
But yeah, they're the two main ones, I guess. The way people deal with their suppliers. Some people are really commercial, and some people lack a bit of that confidence. And in that environment that I've been exposed to, and obviously own businesses and an entity now in China, seen it all, I
Yeah.
think. I'm waiting for the next surprise, but I think I've seen most of it. I believe me, there's a few stories, but you really are, if you're not commercial and if you're not confident, I reckon you could get pretty wrecked in this market.
Yeah.
And you see some of
Get
these
some
real
advice.
big, and sorry to cut you off, but to see some of these co-founders of these really big e-commerce brands, they're really commercial. They're really, and whether that's just been time in the game, but everything is, they're ruthless, and sometimes that's what you need to be in that environment.
Yeah. Fascinating. Okay. So, we talked earlier how a lot of people are getting goods shipped straight from their factory, whichever way. It's getting to the States, going to a 3PL, and then it's got a last mile into Amazon. And those costs are going up, and placement fees, etc. And now you've got AWD,
Yeah.
Amazon Warehouse and Distribution. What are you noticing of what's going on in the US, particularly around like actually that last part, getting goods into Amazon and AWD? Any comments on that?
Yeah. First of all, AWD haven't really got anything positive or negative to say about them. So
Okay.
I'm sort of like on the fence. It's going to be dependent on the seller. We work with some sellers who will not touch it with a 10-foot pole, and we
Yeah.
work with other sellers who love it, right?
Okay.
So we're very open about it. I guess from our standpoint with SKU Drop is, if you want to send everything into Amazon's network, I think you lose a little bit of flexibility. People who are doing multi-channel sort of lose that flexibility there
Yeah.
a little, I
Yeah.
guess, and access to your goods. Logging cases with Amazon can be a little bit stressful and painful, as you know.
Yeah.
So there's that whole, if do you want to dive into their whole ecosystem, excuse me,
Maybe not. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. In
So I
terms of
guess
time, but
we've got a lot of customers who drip feed it. So they
yeah.
keep it in China and leave their options open, whether they want to use AGL, Amazon's freight company, to send goods in, or whether SKU Drop or other freight forwarders, and keep a little bit of that control. So they'll have their goods in China and just drip feed AWD. So I think that's not a bad strategy as well, just to keep a little bit of control. They also send direct to Amazon to supplement at times as well. Don't really have a negative thing to say about them, but also see some other stories. I'm involved in a few groups, high level Amazon groups in WhatsApp and stuff like that, with some sellers around the world, and I see their comments and stuff in there, and they're having a lot of issues. Sometimes it's fantastic, sometimes there's issues. At the moment, as we speak, recording this, there's a lot of restrictions on inventory levels coming back into play. So overstocking, and then also overstocking AWD. People are getting errors to restock into Amazon from AWD as well. So look, they're going to get better at it. There's probably glitches in every system. There is a rumor that, and I'm seeing it now, that there is restock limits coming back in, even from AWD, which is interesting. And I don't know how seasonal sellers can mitigate that, because they're basing off, the past sales results. But you're coming into the summer in the US, and how do you mitigate that? I'm not
building
sure.
up Q4.
Exactly. So yeah.
Interesting. Interesting.
But look, Amazon's AWD's here to stay. Use it to your advantage if you want to. As I said, some people love it, some people won't touch it. Yeah.
Fascinating. And so, look, what's coming down the pipeline for SKU in terms of some interesting projects that you got?
Yeah. Like I mentioned to you, it's taken us a while to work out exactly who we are. And I think we're a multi-dimensional supply chain network. So what that means is we want to be able to unlock levers in your supply chain from having central hub being in China, meaning we want you to be able to strategically unlock strategies that probably weren't there in a real linear type of supply chain that you had in the past. You get the goods from the supplier, you send them to a 3PL, and then it goes in. But then there's pros and cons to that as well. Whereas we want to be able to unlock different options for you along the way to make it not so linear and maybe have some more options. So
flexibility.
We've recognized that China's a big part of our business. It's the heart of our business. For the UK and EU, we've, over the last probably 16 months, we've noticed a lot of people sending from our warehouse to the EU and UK via ship has gone up to like 55 days on the water. Very hard to run a business from China at 50 days plus on the water. Forecasting and what can happen in those 50 days is anyone's guess. We saw a really interesting play by being there. The Eurasia route that not many people in the e-commerce space know about, where you can truck goods from the east coast of China with Shanghai, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, that whole manufacturing east coast, to the border of China, of the border of Kazakhstan and China. That's about a 3 to 4 day trip on a truck.
Yes.
But from there, you're only 8 days into the EU.
Okay.
Now, everyone goes, okay, well, what's that going to cost? Well, I think we worked out it's about 60, 70% less than air freight. It's probably the same as LCL freight. So probably not quite as cheap as sending a full container, but anyone that's not sending a full container, same price for the whole journey.
Right.
So what we're going to do, we're going to unlock a node on the Kazakhstan border, which we've started our feasibility study and found a partner.
Oh, cool.
So you'll be able to send the goods from our EU warehouse, if you want to call it buffer stock or safety stock, or even use it as your permanent path, 3-4 days across, and then sit in our next node and be there waiting for any sea freight or anything that may happen, or a customs, pull up a container, that you will be 8 days into the EU or 9 days into the UK with stock from there. We think that's a bit of a game changer for people selling in that region. The costs had to stack up. They do. The shipping is the same as sending to the middle of the US with an LCL freight. So we're really excited about that. That'll probably come online in the next 3-4 months. We're hoping, fingers crossed.
Great.
And then we've got 3 US nodes. We'd like to call them nodes that you can unlock in our platform, that you can select whether it's LA, Savannah, Georgia, and New Jersey. So
great.
Right around the US, you can position stock if you need to have buffer stock in those regions. I don't think that's going to be a full 3PL, although they are like they're big 3PL warehouses. Our strategy behind it is buffer stock, safety stock. Keep it in China, keep it where it's cheap. But if you need to supplement, you've got some safety stock. It's probably been the biggest feedback. We love SKU Drop. We want to use it, but we need buffer stock still in the US sitting there, maybe 3 or 4 weeks worth of inventory just in case.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we want to open up those avenues. And then the last one is probably Australia, which we might look at. So
Wow. Good.
it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. You don't have to ship using our services, like I mentioned. I think I mentioned. You can use AGL. You can use your own freight forwarder network. We've now got public APIs, which we're working on being able to tap into people's ERPs and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
a lot of work being done and planning and stuff, but it's pretty cool.
It's amazing. Yeah. So you really, because I know you got 15 to 20 software guys in the Ukraine, which is so you kind of like actually a software business as well as with the
Yeah,
physical freight.
very
So
much so. Very much so.
interesting. And
Yeah.
is there anything that we haven't covered that you think the listeners would get value from hearing from you?
Any seller that's selling on Amazon, seeing how important it is to be multi-channel, and and then anyone else who is off Amazon, seeing how important it is to be on Amazon.
Yeah.
So I guess the moral of the story is, I don't think we work with a brand that doesn't sell on Amazon, and I don't think we work with a brand that is not looking at multi-channel and expanding, where their sales platforms are. So, yeah, you can take from that what you wish, but yeah, what percentages make up your businesses on those channels is all dependent on the business. We've got some businesses who are 10% Amazon, 90% off Amazon, and then the other case, 90% Amazon, 10% off channel. But all pretty big enterprises, even to the smallest seller, they're looking at your TikTok and your Shopify and all that sort of stuff, and people are being made aware of it, to diversify. I think that's the big message: diversify as much as you can. There's never been a better time with AI and all that sort of stuff to learn as much as you can, and we're using a lot of that in our business as well. So from support to AI agents and sales and marketing and stuff like that. So there's never been a better time to leverage these sort of technologies in your business. So that's one thing you can't have anymore and say that I didn't know how to do that. You can't say that anymore. You can't say I didn't know how to do that anymore.
That's good. No more excuses.
No more excuses. Yeah. No more excuses.
Excellent. Well, Jamie, this has been incredible, and I know people listening to this point here will be going, "Oh my God, this is something we really need to be looking at." If people do want to connect with you, what's the best way for people to do that?
Yeah, just email, I guess, jamie@skewdrop.com.
As per
just reach out to me.
SKUDROP.
Yeah, SKUDROP.com, jamie@skewdrop.com. Just send me an email. We can have a chat and see if we can help. I'll send you a Calendly link and maybe jump on a call and learn about your business and see what's happening in your supply chain. We do that day in, day out, Hamish. So,
it's great. You've been helping some of our clients, and even just as we were jumping on at the start, you've found what is potentially a massive saving for one of our clients that actually in the previous podcast we touched on, who's got steel products, which it turns out are exempt. So this is how dynamic it is, and having someone like Jamie in the loop there can drop
the reciprocal tariff part, just to be clear.
The reciprocal tariff part,
the reciprocal part of the tariff, which is a big part. I think it's like over 100%. So
yeah, that's right. So
anyway,
crazy times we live in.
I'll make sure I email Mark after this call.
Excellent. Well, again, thanks again, Jamie, and thanks everyone for listening. If you like this and you want to see us do more of this sort of longer form episode, looking at other aspects of the e-commerce game and Amazon game, let us know. So thanks so much, Jamie. Really appreciate you. All the best.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.